The war room was silent. Queen stood at the center of the massive circular chamber, her tall silver form perfectly still. Around her, holographic displays showed the destruction of her Seventh Fleet. Ships burned in the cold darkness of space. Thousands of her people died in bright flashes of light. She watched it all without moving. The Empire had stood for 10,000 years. Her ancestors had built cities that touched the clouds. They had created art that made other species weep with joy. They had solved diseases, ended hunger, and brought peace to dozens of worlds. But they had never learned how to fight a war, not really. Commander stepped forward. He was old his silver skin now faded to gray. He had served mother and grandmother before her. His voice was heavy with grief. "My queen, the Seventh Fleet is gone." Admiral fought bravely. He followed every rule of engagement. He challenged Lord to honorable combat ship to ship. And asked, she already knew the answer. Lord sent 40 ships instead of one. They surrounded the Admiral. They did not accept his surrender. Paused. There were no survivors. Closed her eyes. Admiral had been her friend since childhood. They had studied together, laughed together. Now he was dust floating in the void. "The do not follow the old codes," said Minister, stepping forward from the circle of advisors. She was younger than her silver skin still bright. "They never have. We keep expecting them to fight with honor. They keep proving they have none." "Then what do you suggest?" asked. "That we become like them, that we abandon 10,000 years of civilization." "I suggest we survive," said quietly. The room fell silent again. Turned and walked to the great window that looked out over her capital city. Prime was beautiful in the evening light. Towers of crystal and metal rose toward the purple sky. Flying vehicles moved in peaceful patterns. Children played in the gardens far below. None of them knew how close the enemy was. None of them knew that the fleet was only 3 star systems away, moving closer every day. "How long?" asked. Understood the question. "At their current speed, they will reach Prime in 47 days. We have only 12 warships remaining. They have over 200. So we have already lost." "My queen, please do not say such things." Turned to face her advisors. There were 11 of them, the minds in the Empire. Scientists, philosophers, generals, diplomats. All of them looked tired. All of them looked afraid. "I am not being dramatic, old friend," she said to. "I am being honest. We cannot defeat 200 ships with 12. Our tactics have failed 7 times. Our technology is equal to theirs, perhaps even better in some ways, but we do not know how to use it for destruction. We are builders, not warriors." "We could surrender," Minister said. Several advisors gasped at the word. "I do not suggest it happily, but Lord has offered terms. We would become a subject species. We would serve the Dominion, but we would live." "Would we?" asked. "You have seen what happens to species that surrender to they become slaves. Their culture is erased. Their children are taken and raised as soldiers for the Dominion. Within 3 generations there would be no left, only servants wearing bodies." Lowered her head. She knew the queen was right. "Then we fight," said. "We fight until the last ship. We fight until the last soldier. We die with honor." "Honor," repeated the word like it tasted bitter. "I am tired of honor. Honor has killed millions of my people. Honor has destroyed my fleets. Honor means nothing to the dead." She walked back to the center of the room. The holographic displays still showed the wreckage of the Seventh Fleet. She waved her hand and they disappeared. "There must be another way," she said, "something we have not tried." "We have tried everything, my queen." "Have we?" Looked at each of her advisors in turn. "We have fought the using tactics. We have asked other great civilizations for help, and they have all refused because they fear the Dominion. We have tried diplomacy, and Lord laughed at our ambassadors, but have we looked everywhere?" "Where else is there to look?" asked. Pulled up a star map. She zoomed out, far beyond space, far beyond territory, to the outer edges of the galaxy where young species lived on small worlds. "Here," she said, pointing to a tiny blue planet. "This world is called Earth by its inhabitants. They call themselves humans." Frowned, "I know of them, a primitive species. They have only recently discovered space travel. They fight among themselves constantly. They have no fleet, no advanced weapons. What could they possibly offer us?" "I do not know," admitted. "But our scouts have observed them for some time. They are strange creatures, weak, short-lived, fragile, and yet they survive. They have survived ice ages, plagues, wars, disasters. They should have destroyed themselves many times over, but they did not." "Luck," said another advisor. "Perhaps, or perhaps something else, something we do not understand," closed the star map. "I want a diplomatic team sent to Earth, secretly. Do not let them know." "My queen, this is foolish," said. "What can these humans do? They are children compared to us." "Children see the world differently than adults," replied. "Sometimes they see things we have forgotten how to see. I am not asking for an army, I am asking for a new perspective, a different way of thinking, because our way of thinking is leading us to extinction." Was silent for a long moment, then he bowed his head. "As you command, my queen. I will send our fastest ship tonight." Nodded, she turned back to the window and looked out at her beautiful city. 47 days. That was all the time they had left. Somewhere out there on a small blue world there might be an answer, or there might be nothing at all, but had no other hope left. She whispered into the silence of the war room. "Please let me be right. Was eating noodles when the world changed forever." He sat in a small restaurant near the military base where he used to work. The television on the wall showed the news, something about politics that he did not care about. He was tired. He had spent the morning translating documents for a private company, boring work that paid the bills but did not excite him. 3 years ago, he had been a military strategist. He had studied wars, planned operations, taught young officers how to think about battle. He was good at it. Some said he was the best tactical mind in the Korean military. Then he had disagreed with his superiors about a training exercise. He had been right and they had been wrong, but that did not matter. In the military, being right was sometimes worse than being wrong. He had been quietly pushed out, given an honorable discharge and a small pension. Now he translated documents and ate cheap noodles. His phone rang. He did not recognize the number. "Hello." The voice was female, professional. "Yes. This is Agent from the National Intelligence Service. We need you to come with us. A car will arrive at your location in 2 minutes." Looked at his half-finished noodles. "What is this about?" "I cannot explain over the phone. Please be ready." The call ended. Thought about ignoring it. He was a civilian now. He had no obligation to follow orders from intelligence agents, but curiosity was always his weakness. He paid for his noodles and walked outside. A black car was already waiting. 2 hours later, sat in an underground room somewhere in Seoul. He did not know exactly where. They had taken his phone and driven him through several tunnels. The room was simple, just a table and chairs, but the walls were thick and the door was heavy steel. He was not alone. Across the table sat a woman about his age, with short black hair and intelligent eyes. She wore a white coat like a scientist. "I am Lee," she said. Raised an eyebrow. "Xenobiology, the study of alien life." "Yes." "There are no aliens." Smiled slightly. "That is what I thought until last week." Before could respond, the steel door opened. 2 people walked in, followed by something that was definitely not a person. The creature was tall, over 2 meters, with silver skin that seemed to glow softly. Its eyes were large and purple, with no visible pupils. It had 2 arms and 2 legs like a human, but its fingers were longer and it moved with a strange grace, like it was floating slightly above the ground. stood up so fast his chair fell over. "Please remain calm," said one of the human escorts, a government official in a gray suit. "Our guest means no harm." The silver creature raised one hand in what looked like a greeting. When it spoke, its voice was musical, like several instruments playing at once. I come from a world called Prime, far from your star. I bring a message from my queen, ruler of the empire." Slowly picked up his chair and sat back down. His heart was beating fast, but his mind was already working, analyzing, asking questions. "Why are you here?" he asked. Looked at him with those purple eyes. "We are here because we are dying, and we believe you might help us live." For the next hour explained everything. The empire, the dominion, the war that had destroyed millions of lives and would soon destroy millions more, the fleets that had fallen one by one, the enemy that followed no rules and showed no mercy. Listened carefully, took notes, her scientific mind fascinated by every detail about alien biology and technology. When finished, the room was quiet. "You want us to fight for you?" asked. "No," said. "You could not fight your weapons are too primitive, your ships too few. We want something else." "What?" "We want you to think for us," leaned forward. "We have watched your species for some time. You are violent, chaotic, unpredictable. You fight wars against yourselves for reasons we cannot understand. You destroy your own world even as you live on it. By all logic, you should have gone extinct long ago." "Thank you," said dryly. "But you did not go extinct. You survived. Again and again, when everything said you should fail, you survived. We want to know how. We want to understand the way you think, the way you fight, the way you refuse to die even when death is certain." Was quiet for a moment. "You want us to teach you how to be like us?" "Perhaps. Or perhaps we simply want you to see our problem with fresh eyes. Our way of thinking has failed. We need a different way." The government official stepped forward. "We have agreed to send a small delegation to Prime, observers and consultants. Miss Lee will go as a scientific advisor. We would like you to go as well, mister. Your background in military strategy makes you valuable." "I am a civilian now," said. "I translate documents." "You are the finest tactical mind we have ever trained," the official said. "The military may have let you go, but they never stopped watching you. We need you." Looked at, she was watching him with curious eyes. "This is real," she said. "I have seen their ship. I have examined. This is actually happening." Thought about his small apartment, his boring job, his cheap noodles. He thought about the stars he used to watch as a child, wondering what was out there. Now he knew. "When do we leave?" he asked. Made a sound that might have been relief. "Tonight. Every moment matters. The fleet moves closer to Prime with each passing hour." Stood up, he felt something he had not felt in 3 years. Purpose. "Then let us not waste time," he said. 12 hours later, stood on an alien ship as it rose through Earth's atmosphere. Through a window, he watched his planet grow smaller and smaller until it was just a blue dot in the darkness. Beside him was staring at the stars with wonder in her eyes. "Are you afraid?" she asked. "Yes," admitted, "but I'm also excited. Is that strange?" "No," said, "I feel the same." The ship jumped into faster-than-light travel, and Earth disappeared from view. Former military strategist, current translator, was now flying toward a war he did not fully understand. But he would understand it soon, and when he did, everything would change. Prime was the most beautiful world had ever seen. The capital city stretched across rolling hills, its crystal towers catching the light of the purple sun. Gardens floated in the air between buildings. Waterfalls fell from platforms hundreds of meters high, their mist creating rainbows that never faded. And everywhere there were tall, silver, graceful beings who moved like dancers and spoke like singers. They looked at the small group of humans with curiosity, sometimes stopping to stare before continuing on their way. They have never seen humans before, explained as she led them through the streets. To them, you are very strange. We think the same about you, said smiling. The human delegation was small, and 3 other specialists from different countries, a British engineer named James, an American diplomat named Sarah, a Japanese doctor named, 5 humans to observe an alien war. They were taken to the royal palace, a massive structure of white stone and blue light that sat at the center of the city. Guards in silver armor watched them pass, their expressions unreadable. Queen received them in a great hall filled with floating lights. She was taller than other, her silver skin marked with lines of gold that showed her royal blood. Her eyes were the deepest purple had ever seen, and when she looked at him, he felt like she was seeing everything inside his mind. "Welcome to Prime," she said. Her voice was strong but tired. "I thank you for coming such a long way to help strangers." "We are not here to help," the American diplomat said carefully. "We are here to observe and advise. Our governments have not agreed to any military involvement." "I understand," said. "I ask only that you watch, learn, and share any thoughts you might have. Your perspective may be valuable." Notice that several advisors stood behind the Queen. One of them, an older male with gray skin, was staring at the humans with obvious disapproval. This must be Commander, thought. The one mentioned. He does not want us here. Over the next several days, the humans were given tour of the city, shown technology, and allowed to observe military briefings. They were treated politely but carefully, like children who might break something valuable. Paid attention to everything. He watched how officers discussed battle plans. He studied their fleet formations. He read reports of past battles, translated into English by helpful scholars. And slowly, he began to understand why they were losing. One evening, he sat within the quarters they had been given. The room was comfortable, with soft beds and a window that looked out over the glowing city, but neither of them could relax. "They fight like it is a game," said. He was looking at a tablet showing battle records. "Look at this. Before every engagement, they send a formal challenge to the enemy. They announce how many ships they will use. They offer the enemy a chance to match numbers for a fair fight. And they ignore all of it," said. "Of course they do. Why would you accept a fair fight when you can have an unfair one?" Shook his head. "They have been civilized for too long. They have forgotten what war really is." "What is it?" "Survival, nothing more. There is no honor in war. There is only winning and losing, living and dying." Set down the tablet. "These people are not stupid. Their technology is incredible. But they are fighting with one hand tied behind their back, following rules their enemy does not follow." The next day attended a war council meeting. The great chamber was filled with military leaders, their silver forms bent over holographic displays. Queen sat on a raised platform, watching everything with tired eyes. Commander was speaking. "The fleet will arrive in 31 days. We have gathered our remaining ships here around Prime. We will meet them in honorable battle." "What is your strategy?" asked one of the admirals. "We will form a defensive line between the enemy and the planet. We will challenge Lord to single combat, champion against champion. If he refuses, we will know he has no honor." "He will refuse," said. The room went silent. Every turned to look at the small human standing in the corner. Commander's expression hardened. "You were not given permission to speak." "I apologize for the interruption," said. "But you are making a mistake. Lord will not accept single combat. He has never accepted it before. He will bring all his ships against your defensive line, and he will crush you with numbers." "You know nothing of our ways, human." "I know nothing of your ways," agreed. "But I know war, and I know that your enemy does not care about honor. He cares about victory. Every battle you have fought, you have followed your rules while he followed none. Every battle you have lost." Stepped toward him and for a moment thought the old commander might strike him, but Queen raised her hand. Let him speak, she said. Stopped, his body rigid with anger, but he obeyed his queen. Took a breath. He knew he was taking a risk. These people had thousands of years of tradition. Who was he to challenge it? But people were dying, and they would keep dying unless something changed. Your defensive line will not hold, he said. They will not meet you ship to ship. They will find your weakest point and attack with everything they have. They will sacrifice ships to create openings. They will use tactics you consider dishonorable, and you will lose because you are not prepared to do the same. What would you have us do? Demanded. Abandon our principles, become savages like them. I would have you survive, said. Principles mean nothing if you are all dead. The room erupted in angry voices. Officers shouted at each other and at. Commander argued loudly that the humans should be sent home. Through it all, Queen watched with her deep purple eyes. She did not speak. She did not move. When the noise finally died down, she stood. Enough, she said. Commander, continue your preparations. The human has offered his opinion. It has been heard. She looked at one more time, and he saw something in her gaze. Not anger, something else, something like hope. But then she turned away, and the council continued as if nothing had happened. Later, in his quarters, sat alone, found him staring out the window at the beautiful city. You tried, she said. It was not enough. They will not listen. Then what will you do? Was quiet for a long time. Outside, the lights of Prime glowed like earthly stars brought down to the ground. Millions of people lived in that city. Families, children, artists, dreamers. All of them were waiting to die because their leaders could not see the truth. I do not know yet, he said finally, but I will think of something. I have to. 28 days remained until they arrived. The grand plaza of Prime could hold 200,000. Today, it held even more. They stood in the purple twilight, their silver bodies packed together, their faces turned toward the great platform where their queen would speak. Stood near the back of the crowd with. They were the only humans there. The other members of their delegation had stayed in their quarters, uncomfortable with the emotion in the air. But needed to see this. He needed to hear what would say. The past 2 weeks had been difficult. After his outburst in the War Council, Commander had made sure the humans were kept away from military planning. They were still treated politely, still given food and comfortable rooms, but they were no longer invited to briefings. Had used the time to study. He learned the language, practicing for hours each day until he could speak it fluently. He read their history, their poetry, their philosophy. He came to understand them better than any human ever had. And the more he understood them, the more his heart broke for them. They were good people, kind, gentle, creative. They had built a civilization based on beauty and wisdom, but they had forgotten something that humans never forgot. The universe was not kind. The universe did not care about beauty or wisdom. The universe only respected strength. And strength did not mean following rules. Strength meant doing whatever was necessary to survive. Now, as the crowd waited in silence, Queen appeared on the platform. She wore white robes that flowed like water around her tall form. The golden lines on her skin seemed to glow in the fading light. She looked tired, she looked defeated. My people, she began. Her voice was carried across the plaza by invisible speakers, clear and musical despite her exhaustion. I come to you tonight not with hope but with truth. The fleet will arrive in 14 days. We have done everything in our power to stop them. We have fought bravely. We have followed the ancient codes. We have honored our ancestors with our courage. She paused. The crowd was completely silent. But it has not been enough. A wave of fear passed through the crowd. Could feel it, even though they showed little expression on their faces. Their bodies tensed. Their breathing changed. Our fleets have fallen, continued. Our allies have abandoned us. We stand alone against an enemy that knows no mercy. In 14 days they will come to Prime. They will come with fire and death. And I Her voice broke slightly. "I do not know how to stop them." Silence. Then a sound like wind moved through the crowd, a collective exhale of despair. "I have asked myself many times if we should surrender," said. "Lord has offered terms. We could bow to the dominion. We could give up our freedom, our culture, our future. We would live, but we would no longer be." She straightened her shoulders. "I have decided that this is not acceptable. We will not surrender. We will fight, even if we cannot win. We will show the galaxy that the spirit cannot be broken. When they write the history of our fall, they will say that we died with honor." The crowd began to respond, voices rising in what sounded like agreement mixed with grief. It was the sound of a people accepting their end. Felt something hot rise in his chest. Anger, frustration. He had felt these emotions before many times in his life, but never like this. These people were going to die. Millions of them. Children and artists and dreamers. All because their leaders would rather lose with honor than win without it. Before he knew what he was doing, was pushing through the crowd. "What are you doing?" Grabbed his arm. "Something stupid," he said. "Please do not try to stop me." He pulled free and continued forward, parted around him, surprised to see a human moving so urgently through their midst. Some tried to stop him, but he dodged their hands and kept going. He reached the front of the crowd, just as was finishing her speech. "Let us face the end together," she was saying. "Let us show them what it means to be, let us." "No." His voice cut through the plaza like a knife. He shouted in, the words rough but clear. Every head turned toward him. "No more speeches about honor, no more talk of dying well." Guards moved toward him but raised her hand. She was staring at with wide eyes. "Human," she said, "what are you doing?" Climbed onto a raised platform at the edge of the crowd. Now everyone could see him, this small, fragile creature from a distant world. "I am doing what someone should have done a long time ago," he said. "I am telling you the truth." "Guards, remove him," Commander ordered from beside the Queen. "Wait," his voice was quiet but firm. "Let him speak." "My Queen." "Let him speak." Fell silent, his face tight with anger. Looked out at the sea of silver faces. His heart was pounding. He was one human in a crowd of 200,000 aliens, about to say things they did not want to hear. But he had never been one to stay quiet when lives were at stake. "You are not losing this war because you are weak," he said. "Your ships are fast, your weapons are strong, your soldiers are brave. You are losing because you are fighting the wrong way." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "They do not follow your rules, they never have. They use tricks, lies, ambushes, they attack without warning. They strike when you are weak. And every time you respond the same way, with honor, with tradition, with rules they laugh at." He pointed toward the stars that were beginning to appear in the darkening sky. "My people almost destroyed ourselves. Many times. We fought wars that killed millions. We invented weapons that could burn entire cities in seconds. We were cruel to each other in ways I cannot describe." The crowd was silent now, listening. "But we learned something from all that death. We learned that war is not a game. War does not care about honor. War only cares about who is still alive at the end. If you want to survive, you must be willing to do things you are not proud of. You must fight like your enemy fights. You must be unpredictable. You must be dangerous." He looked directly at Queen. "You say you want to die with honor, but what about your children? Do they want to die with honor? What about the artists who have not yet created their greatest works? What about the lovers who have not yet met? Honor is a luxury of the living. The dead do not care about honor." Was trembling, whether from anger or emotion could not tell. "What would you have us do?" she asked. Felt the weight of 200,000 eyes on him. He felt the weight of millions more in the city around him, listening through speakers. "Stop fighting fair," he said. "They do not deserve fairness. They have shown you who they are. They burn worlds. They kill surrendered soldiers. They have no honor, so why do you give them the gift of honorable battle? He stepped forward, his voice rising. Let me help you. Let me show you how humans fight. We are small, we are weak, we live short lives, but we survive. We always survive, because when everything is lost, we do not give up. We do not accept defeat. We find another way. He reached out his hand toward the queen. Give me a chance. Give your people a chance. Let us be dishonorable together. Let us be clever and cruel and unpredictable. Let us make thee afraid. The plaza was completely silent, stared at his outstretched hand. Commander leaned close to her. My queen, this is madness. He is a primitive. He knows nothing. Did not look away from. He knows something, she said quietly, something we have forgotten. She stepped down from her platform and walked through the crowd toward him. The parted like water around their queen. When she reached, she looked down at him. She was almost twice his height and studied his face. You truly believe you can help us? I believe I can try, and I believe trying is better than dying. Was silent for a long moment. Then slowly, she reached out and took his small human hand in her long silver fingers. Then show me, she said, show me the human way of war. The crowd erupted in confusion, shouting and arguing, but did not hear them. He was looking into the purple eyes of a queen who had just given her people one last chance. He would not waste it. The war room was different now. The holographic displays still glowed with tactical information, but the atmosphere had completely changed. Officers stood in small groups, watching with a mix of curiosity and doubt as a human drew diagrams in the air with his fingers. Had not slept in 3 days. There was no time for sleep. Every hour brought the fleet closer to prime. Forget everything you know about honorable combat, he said, his hands moving through the holographic display. From this moment there is only one rule: survive, whatever it takes. Commander stood in the corner, his arms crossed over his chest. He had not spoken a word since the queen ordered him to cooperate with the human. His silence was louder than any protest. They expect you to form a defensive line, continued, so we will not form one. They expect you to challenge them to battle, so we will not challenge them. They expect you to fight like, so we will fight like humans. And how do humans fight? Asked Admiral, one of the younger officers. She had been more open to ideas than the others. We fight dirty, smiled without humor. We lie, we cheat, we trick, we hide. We attack when the enemy is sleeping. We run away when we are losing. We come back when they think we are gone. We never stop and we never give up. He pulled up a map of the star system. Prime glowed at the center, surrounded by 3 moons, an asteroid belt and 2 gas giants. They have 200 ships, you have 12. In a direct battle you lose, this is obvious, so we do not have a direct battle. Then what do we do? Admiral asked. We make them chase shadows, pointed to various locations on the map. We split our fleet into small groups, 2 ships here, 3 ships there. We use the asteroid belt for cover. We use the moons as shields. When they come, they will not find a line of ships waiting for them. They will find nothing. Nothing. Nothing visible. Our ships will be hidden, engines off, waiting. When they enter the system, they will be confused. They will split up to search for us. And when they do, made a fist. We strike fast and hard. A small group attacks a single ship, destroys it, and disappears before reinforcements arrive. Then we do it again, and again, and again. Finally spoke. This is the strategy of cowards, hiding in shadows, attacking without warning. It has no honor. It has survival, replied. Which matters more to you, Commander, your honor or the lives of your people? The room fell silent. Silver face was impossible to read. Queen, who had been watching from her chair, stood up. Continue, tell us more. For the next several hours, explained the tactics he wanted them to use. He talked about guerrilla warfare, the method of fighting that small groups had used throughout human history to defeat larger enemies. He talked about deception, about making the enemy see things that were not there and miss things that were. He talked about psychological warfare, about breaking the enemy's spirit before their bodies. The officers listened with growing amazement. Some of what described was horrifying to them. The idea of attacking without warning, of pretending to surrender and then fighting again, of destroying supply ships instead of warships, these things violated every principle they held dear. But as spoke, they also began to understand. This human was not evil. He did not enjoy cruelty. He simply understood something they had forgotten, that war was not a contest between equals. War was chaos and death and fear. And in chaos, the one who adapted fastest would survive. Later that day, a shuttle arrived from Earth carrying supplies, and one additional person, Park, was a combat medic who had served in difficult places around the world. He was shorter than, with broad shoulders and a calm face that hid a sharp mind. He had volunteered to come when he heard about the situation. The governments back home are arguing about what to do, told when they met. Some want to help some want to stay out of it, but I did not want to wait for them to decide. You may die here, said. Shrugged, I may die anywhere. At least here it will mean something. Joined them in a small room that had turned into a planning center. Maps and charts covered every surface. Notes in both Korean and script filled the walls. They have a weakness, said, pulling up her research on a tablet. I have been studying their biology. They are stronger than, more resistant to heat and cold, but they have a sensitive respiratory system. What does that mean? Asked. It means they react badly to certain gases. Not deadly, but enough to make them sick, confused, disoriented. Showed them a chemical formula. We can create this gas easily. If we release it on a ship after boarding, their soldiers will be unable to fight properly. Nodded slowly. Boarding actions. We had not considered those. They have been fighting ship to ship, never boarding. Because boarding is considered too aggressive, explained, too personal. Then we will be the first to board. Looked at, can you lead a team? His calm face did not change. Tell me what you need. Over the following days, the transformation began. Officers who had spent their lives following strict codes of combat learned new ways of thinking. They practiced hiding their ships in asteroid fields. They learned to use decoys, empty vessels that looked like warships on enemy sensors. They studied how to attack communication relays so they could not coordinate their forces. It was not easy. Many officers resisted. Some refused to participate and had to be replaced. Commander watched everything with dark disapproval, but he followed his queen's orders. Queen herself surprised everyone. She attended every planning session, asked questions, and made decisions quickly. When officers complained that the new tactics were dishonorable, she silenced them with a look. Honor is what we make it, she said during one tense meeting. Our ancestors created the codes we follow. They did so because they lived in peaceful times when war was rare and formal. But times have changed. They have forced us to change. If we must create new codes to survive, then we will. Our descendants can judge us later if there are any descendants left to do the judging. 7 days before the fleet arrived, the preparations were complete. Stood on the observation deck of the royal palace, looking out at the night sky. Somewhere beyond those stars, 200 warships were coming to destroy everything he could see. Found him there, as she often did. Do you think it will work? She asked. I do not know. Was too tired to lie. I have given them every advantage I can think of, but they still have numbers. If Lord is smart, if he adapts quickly, we could still lose. Then why do you look so calm? Considered the question. Because for the first time we have a chance. Before they were going to lose for certain. Now they might win. That is better. That is something. Stood beside him in silence for a while. You have changed these people, she said finally. Whatever happens, they will never be the same. I hope I have changed them for the better." "I think you have. They were going to die with honor. Now they are going to fight for life." She touched his arm gently. "That is a gift. Whatever happens, remember that." He looked at her, this scientist from Earth who had followed him into the unknown. She had worked without rest, studied alien biology, found weaknesses no one else had seen. Without her, his tactics would be incomplete. "Thank you," he said, "for everything." She smiled slightly. "Thank me after we survive." In the darkness above them, the fleet drew closer. In 7 days, the battle for Prime would begin. And for the first time in this long war, they were ready to fight like they meant it. The fleet entered the system like a storm of metal and fire. 200 warships, each one bristling with weapons, moved in perfect formation toward the planet that had them for so long. Lord stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Conqueror. He was tall even for his dark red skin marked with scars from 100 battles. His eyes, yellow and cold, watched the tactical display with satisfaction. "Scan for enemy vessels," he ordered. His officers worked quickly. Sensors swept across the system, searching for the fleet that should have been waiting for them. "My lord," one officer said, confusion in his voice, "we detect no enemy ships." "None. None in formation, my lord. There are some scattered energy signatures near the asteroid belt and behind the moons, but they are faint, possibly debris or sensor ghosts." Frowned, this was not right. They always met their enemies with formal defensive lines. They always sent challenges and demands for honorable battle. They always announced themselves. "They are hiding," he said slowly. "Interesting. Should we search for them, my lord?" Considered. His fleet was overwhelming. Even if they had hidden their ships, they could not have more than 15 vessels remaining. His 200 would crush them whenever they appeared. "No," he decided. "Proceed to the planet. If they want to hide, let them. We will burn their world and force them to come out." The fleet moved forward, confident in their superiority. They did not see the 3 ships hiding in the shadow of the largest moon, engines cold, waiting. They did not see the 5 small vessels drifting among the asteroids, painted the same color as the rocks around them. They did not see watching their approach on a screen in the war room, a small smile on his tired face. "They are doing exactly what we hoped," said. "They are ignoring the outer system. They are focused on the planet." Queen stood beside him. She wore silver armor now instead of royal robes. If her world was going to fight, she would fight with it. "When do we strike?" "Soon. Let them get comfortable. Let them think they have already won." The fleet passed the asteroid belt without slowing down. They moved past the moons without searching them carefully. Their formation began to spread as they prepared for the attack on Prime. That was when everything changed. The first explosion came from behind them. A supply ship, carrying fuel and weapons for the fleet, suddenly burst into flames. Moments later, 2 more supply ships exploded in the same way. Spun toward his officers, "What happened?" "Unknown weapons fire, my lord. Small ships coming from the asteroid belt. They attacked our supply line and are now retreating." "Chase them, destroy them." 20 warships broke formation to pursue the attackers. They raced toward the asteroid belt, sensors hunting for the ships. They found nothing. The attackers had disappeared among the rocks, their engines off, invisible. But while those 20 ships were searching, another attack came from the opposite direction. 3 vessels shot out from behind a moon, fired everything they had at a communications ship, and vanished again before anyone could respond. The communications ship died in silence, taking with it the equipment that helped the fleet coordinate their movements. "Regroup," shouted. All ships returned to formation. But the fleet was already scattered. Ships were moving in different directions, some chasing shadows, some trying to protect damaged vessels, some simply confused. And the attacks kept coming. In the war room on Prime, watched the chaos unfold with grim satisfaction. "Group 3, strike now," he ordered. "Target the engines of any ship that is isolated. Disable, do not destroy. Make them stop to help their wounded." They had learned well. Their ships appeared from nowhere, struck fast, and disappeared before they could react. They did not try to fight fair battles. They did not challenge anyone to single combat. They hit and ran, over and over, turning the great fleet into a confused mess. Hours passed. They lost 12 ships without destroying a single vessel. They managed to damage 2, but both escaped into hiding to be repaired. Lord stood in the center of his bridge, his red face dark with fury. "This is not war," he growled. "This is cowardice. My lord, we cannot find them. They appear, attack, and vanish. Our sensors cannot track them in the asteroid field." "Then burn the asteroid field, destroy it all." "That would take days, my lord, and they would simply move to another position." Slammed his fist against a console, cracking the screen. He had conquered 100 worlds. He had crushed a dozen species under his heel, and now these weak, artistic fools were making him look like an amateur. "Send boarding parties," he ordered. "Find their hiding spots and take them ship by ship." This was his second mistake. The first boarding party entered in ship that appeared to be disabled and drifting. 50 soldiers moved through dark corridors, weapons ready, confident in their strength. They did not notice the strange smell in the air until it was too late. The gas that had developed filled the ship silently. The soldiers began to cough. Their vision blurred. Their hands trembled. Within minutes, they could barely stand. That was when the doors opened and soldiers attacked, led by a human with calm eyes and a medic's precision. Park had never enjoyed fighting, but he was very good at it when he needed to be. The gas weakened, fell quickly. His team captured the boarding party and took control of the ship. Then they used uniforms and codes to approach another enemy vessel. The trick worked twice before they realized what was happening. By the end of the first day of battle, they had lost 23 ships. They had lost 1. On the second day, tried to adapt. He kept his fleet tight, refused to chase attackers, and moved slowly toward the planet with overwhelming firepower ready. Adapted faster. "They are being careful now," he said. "Good, that means they are afraid enemies make mistakes." He ordered the decoys activated. Dozens of small drones, designed to look like warships on sensors, scattered throughout the system. The fleet saw enemies everywhere, wasting time and ammunition on targets that did not exist. Meanwhile, the real ships continued their attacks, always from unexpected directions, always retreating before they could respond. On the third day, Lord received a message from his home world. Other subject species, seeing the struggle against were beginning to revolt. The Dominion was being attacked on multiple fronts. He stood alone on his bridge, staring at the message. 3 days ago, he had been confident of easy victory. Now his fleet was bleeding, his empire was crumbling, and a species he had considered beneath notice was making fools of his warriors. "My lord," his second-in-command said quietly, "we should withdraw, regroup, and return with a larger force." Wanted to refuse. He wanted to destroy Prime no matter the cost, but he was not stupid. The battle was lost. "Signal the fleet," he said, each word like poison in his mouth. "We retreat." In the war room on Prime, the officers watched in disbelief as the fleet turned and fled. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Admiral let out a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. "They are leaving. They are actually leaving." Queen stood slowly from her chair. She turned to look at who was leaning against a console, exhausted beyond words. "We won," she said, as if she could not believe it. "We survived," corrected. "This battle is over, but the war is not." He was right, of course. But for now, for this moment, they had done something they never thought possible. They had made the mighty Dominion retreat. and the galaxy would never see them the same way again. The throne room of Prime had never been so full. Packed every corner of the great hall, their silver bodies reflecting the light of 1,000 floating crystals. Outside, crowds filled the streets and plazas, watching the ceremony on massive screens. The entire planet had stopped to witness this moment. Queen stood at the center of the room, dressed in robes of pure white and gold. For the first time in months, she did not look tired. She looked strong. She looked like a queen who had led her people through darkness and brought them back into the light. Before her stood 3 humans. Had borrowed formal clothes for the occasion. They hung strangely on his smaller frame, but he wore them with quiet dignity. Beside him, Lee looked uncomfortable with all the attention, her eyes constantly moving around the room. Park stood at attention like the soldier he had once been, his face calm and unreadable. The room fell silent as raised her hands. "My people," she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the planet through speakers and screens. 3 weeks ago, we stood on the edge of extinction. The fleet came to destroy us and we had no hope of victory. Our ancient ways had failed us. Our honor had become our chains. She paused, looking around the room. Then something unexpected happened. A voice from the crowd challenged me. A small creature from a distant world told me that we were fighting the wrong way, and against all wisdom, against all tradition, I listened. Stepped forward and stood before. You came to us as an observer. You were told to watch and report, nothing more. Instead, you risked everything to save people you had never met. You taught us how to fight. You showed us that survival is not shameful. You gave us a future. She reached out and placed her hand on his shoulder. In 10,000 years of history, no outsider has ever received the title I am about to give you. But no outsider has ever earned it the way you have. The crowd leaned forward, thousands of purple eyes watching. I name you Voice of the Alliance. You will speak for the bond between our peoples. Your words will carry the weight of authority. When you speak, it will be as if I speak through you. A murmur of amazement passed through the crowd. This was unprecedented. This was revolutionary. Bowed his head. I am honored, Your Majesty. I will try to be worthy of this trust. Smiled, a rare expression for an, you already are. She turned to and, honoring each of them in turn, received the title of Scholar of the Alliance, recognizing her scientific contributions, became Shield of the Alliance, honoring his courage in combat. When the ceremony ended, the celebrations began. Music filled the streets of Prime. Danced and sang, their voices rising to the purple sky in joy that had seemed impossible just weeks before. Later, in a quiet room in the palace, met with Alone. The formal alliance proposal has been drafted, she said, handing him a document written in both and English. Full military partnership between the Empire and Earth. We offer technology, protection, knowledge. In exchange, we ask for your people's help in the war to come. Read the document carefully. This is generous. It is fair. Without humans, we would be dead or enslaved. Your species has earned a place beside us in the galaxy. Sat down across from him, her formal manner relaxing slightly. I want to thank you personally, not as a queen to an ally, but as one person to another. For what? For making me angry, she laughed softly. When you shouted at me in the plaza, I wanted to have you arrested. No one had ever spoken to me that way, but your anger was honest. It came from a place of caring. You were not trying to insult me. You were trying to wake me up. Nodded. My people have a saying. Sometimes you must be cruel to be kind. We have no such saying. Perhaps we should. Looked out the window at her celebrating city. Tell me honestly, do you think we can win this war? Took a long time to answer. They are not defeated. They have lost one battle, but they have thousands of ships, dozens of subject worlds. Lord will return with a larger force. He will study our tactics and find ways to counter them. So we will lose. No, we will adapt. That is what humans do. Every time an enemy learns our tricks, we invent new ones. Every time we face a challenge we cannot overcome, we find another way. We are stubborn creatures, Your Majesty. We do not know how to give up. Consider this, and you believe you can teach us this stubbornness. I believe you already have it. You just needed someone to remind you. 3 days later, stood on the deck of an ship as it approached Earth. Through the windows, he could see the blue and green planet that had been his home for all his life until a few weeks ago. It looked different now, smaller, more fragile, and somehow more precious. Stood beside him, watching their home world grow larger. "Are you ready?" she asked. "Ready for what?" "To explain all of this to 7 billion people." Laughed tiredly. "No, but I will do it anyway." The ship landed at a military base outside Seoul. A crowd of officials, journalists, and soldiers waited behind security barriers. The news of the battle at Prime had reached Earth weeks ago, spreading across every screen and device on the planet. Humanity knew it was not alone in the universe. Humanity knew that a war was coming, and humanity was terrified and excited in equal measure. Walked down the ramp with and beside him. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions, officials pushed forward to shake their hands. But one person stood apart from the crowd, waiting quietly. Smother. She was a small woman, gray-haired and wrinkled, wearing a simple dress. When reached her, she looked up at him with eyes full of tears. "You did not tell me you were going to the stars," she said in Korean. "I did not know myself until the last moment. I watched the news. They said you saved an entire planet." Shook his head. "I helped, that is all." His mother reached up and touched his face. "My son, the hero, your father would be proud." They embraced while cameras captured the moment. Around them, the world was changing. Humanity was stepping onto a galactic stage it had never known existed. There would be challenges, conflicts, dangers beyond imagination. But for this one moment, a son held his mother and felt like he was home. Far away, in the dark spaces between stars, Lord sat in his private chambers aboard the Conqueror. The fleet was returning to space to regroup and rebuild. On the screen before him, images played in a loop. Images of a human standing in a plaza full of, shouting words that changed the course of a war. "Computer," said, "tell me everything we know about the planet called Earth." The screen filled with data, population, geography, history, military capabilities, cultural information. Read it all with yellow eyes that grew colder with each word. These humans were fascinating. They were weak, short-lived, fragile, and yet they had turned the tide of a war that should have been impossible to turn. One human, with nothing but words and ideas, had transformed a defeated empire into a dangerous enemy. "Interesting," murmured to himself. "Very interesting." He made a decision then. There had been a nuisance, a problem to solve, but these humans were something different. These humans were a threat. And threats needed to be eliminated. "New orders," he said. "Before we return to Prime, we will deal with the human world. Send scouts, find their weaknesses, prepare an invasion plan." His officers acknowledged the command. Lord smiled coldly at the image of the small blue planet on his screen. "Enjoy your victory, little humans," he whispered. "It will be your last." Back on Earth stood on a hill overlooking Seoul at sunset. The city spread out below him, lights beginning to twinkle as darkness fell. Stood beside him, their shoulders almost touching. "They will come for us," she said quietly. They will come for Earth." "Yes. Are we ready?" Thought about all the battles humanity had fought against itself. All the wars, all the struggles, all the times they had stood at the edge of destruction and found a way back. "No," he said, "we are not ready, we are never ready." He looked up at the stars appearing in the darkening sky. "But we will be when they arrive. That is what we do. We adapt, we survive, we find a way." Took his hand. Then let us start preparing." Together, they walked down the hill toward the glowing city, toward a future that was uncertain and dangerous and full of possibilities. The war for the galaxy had only just begun, and humanity, for better or worse, was now part of it. They would face Lord, they would face challenges that no human had ever imagined. And they would do what they had always done. They would fight, they would adapt, they would survive. Because that was what humans did.